Astonished. People always remarked in the first few years after how beautiful and perfect the weather was that morning. Clear sky, mild, with a hint of the crisp fall days ahead, and sunny. What surprised me about all these recollections was that I noticed it too that morning, without a clue what the day would bring, or how all of our lives and our world would change forever. Did we all notice this before, or only afterward on reflection? But I did. I really did notice before. I distinctly remember that morning. I noticed the time, about 8:30 a.m. Wow, today is perfect. Usually I was in a rush walking down Henry Street to catch the N train at Court Street in Brooklyn Heights. I noticed nothing except my feelings of deep reluctance to do another day's duty at the global investment bank Credit Suisse. But that day, just before turning to descend into the subway entrance, I tilted my head up to the sky, toward the west, and I noticed, wow, beautiful. In September 2001, I was a young lawyer negotiating master trading agreements for financial derivatives contracts. My office was in the Metropolitan Life Building, overlooking Madison Square Park at 23rd and Madison Avenue. Another thing I would notice 2 hours later that morning is that my office had an unobstructed view south to the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. Astonished, I watched the first tower fall in real time. In my memory, that collapse was slow motion, at least 5 times slower than when I saw the footage later on television. I guess that's what you'd call a trauma response? The horror? This incredible thing that is happening before your eyes? Well, the brain slows it down. You can't take it in real time. There's a time delay, and then you are really in proper shock. I had been obsessing over what damage would be done after that fire was out and how in the world would they get up that high to fix it. You see, there was no universe in which the towers collapsed. The world broke that day. My world, our world, and my heart, and my innocence. It took 20 years for me to realize that although I did not lose anyone that day, I had deep, unseen, and unprocessed PTSD from the events of 9/11. I decided to share this story because I cry more now, 24 years later, than I did at the time or in the years since. I don't know why. But maybe telling my story will help. Such a big thing happened, and I think I never considered that it was personal, that 9/11 also happened to me. Considering the families, the wars, I was not a casualty. My grief was not special. The aftermath in our society and world so extreme as to blot out any recognition that I had suffered and changed in any way that was important to acknowledge. My train was under the World Trade Center moments after the first plane hit. It was probably the last train to pass through before service was halted. We were stopping in the tunnel. There was congestion. The typical groans from impatient subway passengers. We pull into Rector Street, and after a few moments, the doors open, but close just as quickly. There's a smoke condition at the station, the conductor announces. No one can exit. The train moves on. 10 minutes or so later, I emerge at 23rd Street with my face in my phone, waiting for a signal to see if I had messages or, the usual, just as soon as you get out of the train, you check your phone. Considering the mobile phone technology at the time compared to now, I can hardly imagine what would have been so interesting and urgent that I'd crossed halfway through Madison Square Park before noticing everyone around me was obsessing over their phone. None of us had a signal. On entering the MetLife building to report to work, I heard a second plane hit the towers, which happened at 9:03. The first had hit at 8:46. So it would have been about 10 minutes after 9 a.m. by the time I was hearing about the attack. The chatter in the lobby was that, that sounds like terrorism. One plane maybe is an accident, but not two. Upstairs, people were standing around in stunned silence. I sat at my desk trying to make calls, periodically getting through to friends and family to check on everyone, refreshing the internet to reload the latest news, occasionally walking over to the window to watch the towers burning until we could see them no more. By midday, once it seemed there was no further immediate threat from planes in the air, I left the office to walk to my friend's apartment across an uptown a mile or two on 34th and 9th Avenue. As emergency vehicles continually headed south with lights flashing and sirens blasting, I was among the silent hordes walking north. The bridges were closed. I don't know how, when, if I could get back home to Brooklyn. That afternoon, my friend and I watched the live news coverage until it was reported that the Manhattan Bridge had opened to pedestrians. So I said goodbye about 4 p.m. and walked from 34th Street to my apartment in Brooklyn Heights, across the Manhattan Bridge with many other hundreds and thousands. My own real-life disaster movie blockbuster adventure. In the days and early years that follow, I remembered how the gaping hole in the skyline devastated me. Oh, how we missed it. How we missed them. The Twin Towers. The view walking along the Brooklyn Heights promenade when turning onto the Brooklyn Bridge in car heading to Manhattan. When at parts of the city heading south, those towers being suddenly gone was the worst symbol of the tearing out that had happened of the fabric of our very existence. I turned 24 2 weeks later, and I don't remember what I did to celebrate. 2 months later, I took a trip to visit with friends in San Francisco and I bought my first painting. It was the start of my love affair with collecting art and deeply engaging with the world of current artists. In the last couple of years, as I have taken a fresh look at that event and what it meant in my life, I realize it probably greatly contributed to my inability to settle over the years. To settle into what people in society, family, and friends expected of me. The ordeal gave me a taste of the surreal, the mystical, and it was romantic in a way. That's a very dark thing to say, but I think spiritually I'm always since then seeking a comparable antidote. So I have taken risks, I have made unusual choices, I follow my heart. I live intensely because I guess, of course, I could have died that day. Or any other day. And someday, I will.